Hello, and welcome to this National MS Education Awareness Month teleconference, hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, and made possible with support from Biogen, Novartis Pharmaceuticals, EMD Serono, Genentech, and Sanofi Genzyme. I'm your host, Casey Minnis, Director of Communications for MS Focus, and I'm joined by Laura Kolaczkowski, MS Advocate, who will discuss the topic, Putting the Focus on You with Patient-Centered Research. Please note there are slides available for this presentation. To view them, go to readytalk.com and join with the access code 7766805. Again, that's readytalk.com and join the meeting with the access code 7766805. Now, allow me to tell you a bit about our speaker. Laura Kolaczkowski of Beaver Creek, Ohio, was diagnosed with MS in 2008. Since that time, she's been actively involved in MS advocacy, particularly through empowering others with MS to participate more in their own healthcare relationships with providers and researchers. Laura is the lead patient representative and serves as the chair of the governing board for iConquerMS. Laura, thank you for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Casey. I'm really excited because putting the focus on you and me is really important to the research conversation as the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation selected this as their MS Awareness Month theme. This idea, for those of you who are familiar with MSF, will come as no surprise because I know MSF does focus everything they do in keeping the needs of the patient first and foremost. As Casey said, I'm Laura Kolaczkowski. I was diagnosed with MS in 2008. I live in Ohio, and I have the good fortune, though, have coincidentally come across a series of opportunities that allow me to serve as the lead patient representative for iConquerMS. I'm really appreciative of this invitation from the MS Foundation to share what I'm doing in the areas of patient-centered research for multiple sclerosis. If you got your MS Focus magazine in the past couple weeks, you may have seen my name there as well. And the MS Focus staff, I want to give a shout out to them, a big thank you for highlighting what we're doing there as well. I know a lot of us are visual learners. We want to read about what we're thinking about, and we want to hear it too. So I think tonight through my presentation, you'll find I use a lot of mixed methods. I'm going to put a lot of information out here very quickly to you. Please don't despair about that. This slide deck will be available on the MS Foundation website when this is finished, and will also be available to answer questions at the end. So hang on and let's get going into my presentation. To begin with, I'd like to show you some thoughts about questions about multiple sclerosis. And I'm just wondering, do any of those resonate with you? Have you thought of any of those as your own research ideas and wondered about them? These are topics such as symptoms, anxiety, fatigue, sexual dysfunction, all sorts of reproductive disabilities. You know, these are questions we think of day in and day out as we live with MS. And these are also, what I'm showing now, are research ideas that have been suggested by members of the iConquerMS community, which is a patient-centered approach to research. Now, you're saying, who is iConquerMS? I have a feeling there may be a few people on this call tonight who already know who we are, but if you'll bear with me, I need to back up and introduce us to everyone else. To begin with, everyone is iConquerMS. We are iConquerMS, those of us who are affected by multiple sclerosis, and that could be if you have the disease, or if you're a caregiver, or you have a family member or a friend, or even if you're a researcher. Each of us as individuals make up iConquerMS. But then there's a larger group of us. There are over 3,500 people in this country and from 22, or in the United States and 22 countries who've already joined iConquerMS to help us further MS research. And then I would like to also point out our governing structure. As Casey pointed out, I am chair of our governing board. We also have an engagement committee and a research committee. We have over 40 members on those 3 committees and boards, and the majority of them are people who live with MS. And this is I like to put faces to things. So those of you who are just on the phone, I'm sorry you're not seeing this, but I'm showing these are just a few of the advocate faces who are behind our initiative. And these pictures were taken last year when we gathered in Boston for a leadership summit. Also, we get professional guidance for the iConquerMS project team from 3 really stellar organizations. The Accelerated Cure Project, which is in Boston, and they're joined by Feinstein Keene Healthcare, who's a leader in personalized healthcare initiatives for several decades, and then the Computational Sciences Division at Arizona State University. And this partnership gives us the professional guidance that we need at all steps in the research process. And as I said, I like to put faces with things. Again, if you're on the phone, I'm sorry you can't see these smiling faces, but I'm sharing the photo of Robert McBurney, who's CEO of ACP. On the right side is Marcia Keene, who's chair of the strategic initiatives. On the bottom are other supporting players of Kenneth Butow, Bill Tulsky, Lindsay Santiago, Holly Schmidt, and their titles are all identified. But in the center, I want to give a special shout out to Sarah Loud, who is our project manager for iConquerMS, and she is the person solely responsible for making sure we stay on track and true to our mission. Now, you might say, oh, who else supports iConquerMS? I've got quite a team of players with me these days. Representatives from the major multiple sclerosis advocacy organizations also have a presence on our structure, which means not only do we have members from the MS Foundation, we also have MSAA, Can Do MS, the MS Coalition, and the National MS Society. And when we talk about iConquerMS as a group effort, I really like to stress this is a group effort. If you look at this slide and the number of groups that have come to the table to help us move MS research forward. And tonight I'm telling something publicly for the first time. I'm introducing our latest iConquerMS partner, which is Smart Patients. I'm excited about this collaboration. This is a forum that will be dedicated to multiple sclerosis for people affected by the disease, as well as their caregivers. Smart Patients is free from advertising and it's protected from data mining. So the Smart Patients community will be a place to have all the conversations you want with others who understand life with MS without concerns of the commercial implications. And the address for that will be smartpatients.org/iConquerMS. Now, I've got to get into a little bit of background of how iConquerMS came to be before I tell you more about what we do specifically. To understand the potential of the research, we really do have to look at our origins. And I hate to overwhelm you with acronyms, so I will do my best to explain everything as I go along. We are funded by PCORI. PCORI is the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, and it is a nonprofit organization that was established by Congress in 2010. The funds that come from PCORI are used for research that provides evidence-based information for people to make better decisions about their health care. We're fortunate that PCORI to date has funded 570 research studies to date, and they're still working on distributing more money. In addition, PCORI has funded a number of multiple sclerosis studies. They have funded 17 studies associated with MS, and I've given you just a few of those titles. There's always, with all scientific papers and proposals, there's lots of words that you don't want to read through, but there is a study there on telerehabilitation with physical therapy, discontinuing your disease-modifying therapies with MS, the use of rituximab, and another one that looks at the use of home-based complementary and alternative medicine as an intervention. So it's a wide range of projects that PCORI has funded for MS. So this is the first way they do funding, and it's through the individual projects. The second funding source stream they have is PCORI sponsors funding called PCORnet. PCORnet stands for the National Patient-Centered Research Network, and its primary goal is to create a national network of people and their clinical records that are representative of this country, our population, and our health needs. And I'd like to just stop. I'm not a big fan of reading what's on PowerPoint slides per se, but I do want to read that second point, that the goal of PCORnet is to improve the nation's capacity to conduct clinical research by creating a large, highly representative network that directly involves patients in the development and execution of research. And it's critical to note there, patient is the beginning part of everything with PCORI. There are two key parts to PCORnet, this patient-centered outcome research network. There are the PPRNs, which stands for Patient-Powered Research Networks, and the CDRNs, the Clinical Data Research Networks. Together, the PPRNs and the CDRNs give us one powerful network with data that's changing how research can be done faster, quicker, and getting all sorts of data points together through both of those systems. To begin with, I just want to show you, and I know for those of you who are on the computer, the screen for this is very small because there are so many PPRNs to list. But the patient-powered research networks, there are 20 of them, including the iConquerMS network. There may be other ones that are of interest to you as well, and I would encourage you after we're done to go online and look at what's available in the PPRNs at the PCORnet website. Again, I will give those addresses at the end. Participation in the PPRNs is strictly voluntary, and people can join more than one PPRN. So, for example, I belong to the MS Patient Powered Research Network, but I also contribute to the Healthy Heart Initiative, which is another PPRN. Our PPRNs cover a wide range of areas, and it includes pediatric and adult populations. Just for an example, since this print is small and for those of you on the phone, PPRNs include Crohn's and colitis, kidney disease. There's a muscular dystrophy PPRN, and also one for rare epilepsy. The other arm of PCORnet is the Clinical Data Research Networks. These are a bit more complex to understand because these are healthcare systems that are involved in PCORnet. There are 13 of them right now, and through the CDRNs, we gather de-identified information from the clinical records of people who've been treated in these healthcare systems. The CDRNs are situated across the country. They include pediatric and adult clinic records. Participation in the CDRNs, unlike the PPRNs that is voluntary, is automatic if you're treated for any medical condition within one of these healthcare systems. Your records, your electronic records, become part of that clinical data research network. And I like to point that out because the majority of people don't even know they are part of this large research and groundbreaking research effort. Now with PCORnet, we have this robust infrastructure that unites people, clinicians, health systems, and all the data that's being generated from patients every day as they have their health encounters. So when you go to see your physician, if you are within one of the systems that is a CDRN, that data is being captured. PCORnet then links up these millions of data points that were previously not connected together, used to be really fragmented in separate records across the country, and puts them together into a usable format. And then it also, for PCORnet, not only do we have the data contributed to the CDRNs through the clinical records, but then we also have the specific data captured in the individual PPRNs. So the overall goal is changing the research conversation from one that's directed by researchers to one that is being driven by the needs of patients and other healthcare stakeholders. Now through PCORnet, we currently have data from approximately 110 million people who've had a medical encounter in the past 5 years. If you think about that, that's a lot of records considering we only have 325 million people in this country. Some of these individuals may have visited more than one network partner and would be counted more than once in this information, but it's still a significant number of people who have had an encounter, and we have captured their medical records, or I should say their clinical data records. Now, to get the PCORnet information together, first thing we need to do is make sure there's something common among the information that we're gathering, and we do that through the common data model. Our common data model is taken from the records in the clinic visits, such as what condition are you being seen from. You've got your ICD codes, your diagnostic codes that go into your records, and that's captured. A lot of information is captured there, and the PCORnet members have worked to make sure that every member of PCORnet, the PPRNs and the CDRNs, are using the similar common data model so that we can do queries, and when we ask a question, we know we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. For those of you who are on the phone, I'm sorry you're not seeing this again. I will try to talk through it. I'm giving an example of what we really have of the power of the PCORnet data as it relates to what we've done with iConquerMS. We were working on a proposal where it had been questioned, was our population that we had enrolled in iConquerMS representative of the MS population? We were able to take the query to the PCORnet and enter into that data using the International Classification of Diseases Code, or the ICD, for multiple sclerosis, and had the network queried for all individuals who were treated for multiple sclerosis in the year 2015 within the PCORnet clinical networks. We returned records of 88,000 people, 88,766 people who were seen in the year 2015 for MS. That breakdown that we have by sex, by race, and by age group is fairly representative and matches fairly close to what we have in the iConquerMS community. We also were able to ask questions if we wanted to based on the common data model, such things as how many times did people visit their doctor, what drugs were prescribed, or even what symptoms were they being seen for. But there's so much more information. We need to understand how MS affects our lives, and it's not going to come from that big look of the data, the CDRNs, and that common data model, but we also need the contributions of individual people like you and me. And that's where the information gathered by the PPRNs, such as iConquerMS, help to complete our research picture. With the CDRNs, give us the numbers and statistics, but I like to say iConquerMS accurately represents our population and helps us better understand what we're looking for and what we deal with day in and day out. And I have up now on the screen for you to see how this same data, looking at that clinical data model from our query of the PCORnet and the CDRN, maps to what we got as an example from iConquerMS, and it really is quite similar. So we can say to anyone wanting to use our network, yes, what we're doing at iConquerMS is the same. Now, you say, what can we do with this data, this research information? Well, within our PPR, we start with the basic information, and allows us to fill the common data model categories, and we compare with data within the PCORnet. Not only are we looking at what people with MS go through, we can compare it with other disease conditions or other illnesses. So that helps to form basis for commonalities perhaps in autoimmune disorders. Say we can look at the similarities between how people with multiple sclerosis are receiving treatment compared to, say, perhaps rheumatoid arthritis. iConquerMS, so is doing that. We're gathering our common data model. Then we also are collecting information through Real MS, which is a research engagement about life with MS is the name of our study. And it's a longitudinal study about MS that we're submitting to our participants every 6 months to complete. And then additionally, we have what we would call investigator-initiated studies, and those are things that the investigators come to us and want us to query our community or use the iConquerMS community for their research. So I've listed a few of those topics that we've worked on with outside investigators, such as the telerehabilitation for physical therapy, complementary and alternative treatments, access to insurance, and day programs for people with MS. And we're now looking for those researchers who can also work with us and want to match up our topics that we're interested in. I want to give you a couple of prime examples, and again, the slide says quite a bit here. It's an example of a study that researchers from the NYU Langone MS Center came to us with and asked if they could use our community to get more information for a proposal they were submitting. The question they wanted to ask was, what kind of experience do our members in iConquerMS have with natalizumab or Tysabri? Are they on a standard every 4-week dose, or do they experience or have knowledge of being able to take that dosing every 6 to 8 weeks, which may be as effective as the standard dose and reduce the treatment risk? We were able to go into our community, and from the answers that we have from our common data model, because we know what treatments people have used in the past or are currently on or have never used, we were able to identify approximately 375 people in our cohort who have used Tysabri at one time or another, and specifically send to them a survey to help better understand the dosing practices that they use for their natalizumab treatments. Another example here was, quite surprising, we were surprised. We had a study proposal that came to us from Stanford University, and the researcher actually knew about iConquerMS because she also has multiple sclerosis and is already a member of our community. We didn't know this until she came to the research committee with her request. The study was explained, and then the respondents got to rank the options for therapy to help with stress, fatigue, depression management. And each of these surveys took less than 10 minutes to complete and helped this researcher include the patient preferences into her proposals. The Stanford study was looking at web-based classes that would be useful for people with progressive forms of multiple sclerosis. So we talk about what can we answer. With iConquerMS, there's a lot of things. When we start looking at data and questions and things we can put together, we might find out what causes MS, what factors affect the disease activity. Can MS be prevented? Even if, can we use what you experience with your MS compared to my experiences and see what kind of information we can glean from that. Now, you're saying, okay, that's all good and well. We know, how's it different? There's a lot of multiple sclerosis registries. I'm sure you probably, if you picked up the phone and called today or came in on the webinar, you probably are familiar with some of them. I belong to other ones myself, and they all serve a purpose in one way or another. But what makes iConquerMS different is that we are patient-centered, we are patient-driven, and we are patient-directed. The number one important point is people affected by MS govern all aspects of the multiple sclerosis registry at iConquerMS. Our community members can suggest research topics that might be meaningful and impactful immediately. Those questions are vetted through our community. We also have ask our members to give feedback on proposed research studies that are submitted by researchers before we go all in and say, yes, we will help with the research project you're proposing. It is first reviewed by our research committee. So I can give you an example. We were asked by a large hospital in Boston to assist on a project about MS and mental health, and our research committee reviewed the proposal. After they approved it, then we polled our community and asked if this was a topic of interest and did they think it was a worthwhile effort to go forward with research. We received an overwhelmingly positive response and have since moved on with that study. So now we ask, who can join this? It's time to focus on who's going to be able to help us. How many of you have wanted to do research or help, but you were told you were not the right age or had MS too long, or even the choice of treatment you've taken doesn't fit what they're looking for? I know when I was first diagnosed, my hand went up immediately, and I said, I want to do whatever I can do to help. My neurologist went out of the room and said, let me go talk to my study coordinator. He came back in with a dejected look and said, I hate to tell you, but you're too old. I was diagnosed at the age of 54, and the cutoff age was 50. So even though I was willing, I was turned away. With iConquerMS, everyone is needed to help us, because we can't learn about the big picture of multiple sclerosis by only looking at the little specific pieces that are done currently the way we do research. And by having the information from everyone, we can assemble a better idea of what real MS looks like. So now, this is my pitch, because I really want to encourage you to join us at iConquerMS. The process to join is really simple. It takes very little time and effort, and I promise you it's not painful at all, and you can do it from the privacy of your own home. You begin by going to iConquerMS.org. You can go to that site, or you can go to iConquerMS.org/join. There you will see a place where you'll first be asked to submit your email address to confirm that you really are who you are. Once you get that email and confirm it, you'll go back into the site and you will complete the informed consent form. Just like every research project, we are governed by institutional review board. All of our research is approved by the IRB, as they're referred to, and we must get that approval that you know. The informed consent form says you know you are participating in research. After you do that and you complete the informed consent form, we then ask you to share your contact information. Now, this next slide is really important too, and it's critical because we are very serious about the significance of keeping our promise to our participants. All of your information, if you join iConquerMS, all of your information will be de-identified and your privacy will be protected. We will keep you informed of everything we're doing with iConquerMS and all research opportunities. We believe in 100% transparency. We'll answer your questions honestly and quickly, and never, 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 never will we sell your email address or share it with anyone until we get your permission first. I want to give you a brief look at what our portal looks like. So since I'm talking in these vague terms, what I'm showing now is the landing page for iConquerMS, and this is where you would go in, you'd join us and sign up, enter your email address to receive your information, and as you'll see, there are several points on that page where you can either select Join Now. There's also the opportunity where you can sign up to learn more. So if you're not particularly sure that you want to join, but you think you'd like to learn more about us, you can enter your email address there, and we will get in touch with you, and we will not bombard you, okay? I'm trying to get the next slide to go here for me. So when you join iConquerMS, this is what you see. This is what I just told you. You agree to the informed consent, submit your email address, complete your profile, and you're ready to go. Then what? So you've joined. You say, what happens next? Well, it's really pretty simple. After you initially join, we ask you to complete the baseline surveys. It's a basic demographic information about who you are, kind of zip code area, get an idea, age group, type of MS you have, maybe how long you've been diagnosed, and this helps us to fill our common data model information. After that, after you've completed those baseline surveys, you'll receive notices via email of additional surveys and studies that are appropriate to you and from what you've answered on our common data model responses, and then asked to respond. We recognize that everyone leads a busy life, and we do our most to be respectful of your time. We keep most of the surveys are very brief. You can answer them at your own pace. If you get an interruption, the dog barks or the phone rings or you're just too tired and want to stop, you can stop there and come back to them. And like everybody else, we know our inbox of email is pretty darn full, and we don't necessarily open everything. We have good intentions, but we get overwhelmed with it. So we promise not to bombard you with too many emails as well. Now, at any given time, the information about the surveys that you've worked on is on your dashboard on the iConquerMS website, so you can go in and you can see what are new surveys, what you have in progress, and what is pending. And I want to add, I'm showing on the screen right now, this is my dashboard. I'm proud of it because I'm 100% completed right now, but that's going to change next week because we're going to issue the next round of our Real MS study. And so all of a sudden I will have more surveys that are in the new category that will prod me to, when I go in and look, I'll see I have surveys that need to be finished. And I want to add that you don't have to join us at any particular time in our survey cycle. You can join iConquerMS at any time. Now, in addition to all this of your healthcare data, the other ways we want you to participate, and I'm getting back to stressing again, this is your initiative. This is my initiative. iConquerMS is about you and me. We need you to help us in other ways as well. We need you to help us share the information about iConquerMS. We want your feedback on ways we can improve the website and ways we can improve our efforts to conduct research through iConquerMS. You may have better ideas than me or anybody else, and we want to hear them. And we also need your help in getting the word out to others about iConquerMS. We have launched an iConquerMS Champions program, complete with a brief online training session so you yourself could feel comfortable talking about our MS-PPRN. We also have a lot of materials for you to use. This is our newly designed brochure that I'm showing right now, and explains iConquerMS in simple, easy to understand language. We want everyone to be part of the cure. This new brochure underwent a major revamp, and this is our new look. The people on the cover are people like you and me, and all have MS, and they have joined us, shared their information, and shared their photos to put the real face of MS onto our materials. So why would you become a champion for us for iConquerMS? Well, for one reason, you and I know we all have a story, and we like to tell our story. And through the Champion program, you can share your story of why you decided to join iConquerMS and how the research we're doing can make a change for you. You can help us raise the awareness that iConquerMS needs many more people to join. You know, we have 400,000 plus people in this country with multiple sclerosis. Right now, we're nowhere near approaching even a small percentage of that. So we really need to spread the word out about iConquerMS to those people, and the best way to do it is FaceTime, from you to me to the next person. We have the materials available that we would provide to our champions to distribute to any place you want to present our message. Now, you remember these research ideas I started with? I showed them again. We have them up. Everyone has questions they want answered about MS. We also promise that we're continuing to work hard to find answers to your questions. We've been sharing these research topics with researchers at conferences, trying to find matches for researchers with our topics. There's a place on our website where you actually can go in and suggest your research question. You do not have to enter your name or your email or your phone number if you don't want to, but it's helpful because if you have a question and we have a question about your question, it's nice to be able to reach you. But there is that opportunity right directly on the website to type in your question. We've been taking the information about iConquerMS out to the researcher community for the past couple years now. Up on the screen right now I have a picture of Holly Schmidt, the VP of Scientific Development at the Accelerated Cure Project and the co-chair of our research committee at the poster at our Consortium of MS Centers annual meeting last year, where we took out the news of iConquerMS and just tried to expose researchers to, hey, we're here, we have an assembled group of people who really want to help you do research. More recently, again, I'm showing another poster from a presentation. I'm showing our CEO and my co-principal investigator, Robert McBurney, at the ACTRMS conference just a couple weeks ago, the Americans Committee for Treatment and Research in MS. We were able to present a look at the quality of life measures that we're seeing in the MS community that were taken off of our baseline information and our first round of real MS data that was returned. And we met with researchers who are interested in doing more to understand that important area of life with MS. Now, at any time, if you join iConquerMS and you're putting all this information in, at any time you can go into the site and you can pull up, how do I compare, or what's up with the cohort? What does this look like? And what I'm showing now is a view data by category, which is the next category we're presenting on in a poster. And this is the ability to participate in social roles and activities. And I was able to pull this up and show my response to the various questions in this domain as it compares to the response of other people, and according to the type of MS that we've self-identified, whether we have RRMS, CIS, RIS, PPMS, the whole alphabet soup of MSs. So we break that data down. And what are we doing with this data? We have proposed to the upcoming consortium from MS Centers meeting in May that we will focus on the social stigma of MS and how that affects our daily lives. So using the entries from questions such as this one, we see patterns emerge. Sadly, we find a pattern of isolation that emerges among people with MS, particularly in the category of secondary progressive MS. And we'll look for ways to further explore this topic within our community and then bridge that information to researchers. So I'd like to just stress to you, we can move MS research forward when we change the research focus. You notice there in focus, there's two key letters. There you have you. I want to put you into the focus of MS research, and I also want to put us in there because between you and us, I really think we can move MS research forward in this country and actually impact the world too, not just the United States. So at this time, I really want to thank again the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation for their interest in iConquerMS and learning more about PCORI and PCORnet. And thank you to MS Foundation and the sponsors for this month's MS Education Awareness Programs. I know there was a lot of information shared in my talk, and I hope above everything else, the one message that you take away is that you as an individual can make a difference in MS, and it begins by joining me at iConquerMS. And I hope you will do that, and I hope you do that very soon, if not tonight, tomorrow, or over the weekend. So anyway, I'm available to take questions. I'm happy to provide answers if I can, and I will turn this back over to Casey. So Casey, if you want to help me with questions, that'd be great.
Absolutely, Laura. That's a terrific presentation. If our listeners have questions, if you are online, you have the option to send your questions by chat or to hit the raise hand button. When you hit that raise hand button, then I'll be able to see that you have a question and hopefully bring you on the line.
And I will say, too, that as you digest this, and if you go back and look at this slide deck, once it gets posted on the MS Foundation website, you'll see the address there of info@iconquerms.org, and we are available to take your questions in writing, too. Because a lot of times I'll listen to a presentation, I'll go home, I'll go, oh, I wish I had asked, or if only I had thought. So we are always available to answer your questions then, too.
Well, sometimes it takes a moment for our listeners to enter those questions by chat. While we wait to see if there are any questions, let me ask, what do you think has been the biggest success that iConquerMS has seen so far?
Wow, we have successes on a number of levels. I think I pointed out early on, I think we have a tremendous success of being that central point that patients, clinicians, researchers, and the MS advocacy organizations all can come together to work towards that common goal of improving the lives of people who are affected by MS. So to me, that is one of our shining moments, and I take great pride in that because to this point, we've not had that opportunity to see everyone come to the table with that common goal like that. Among the other successes, I think, is watching people who are affected by MS. I try really hard not to call us patients because we're so much more, but watching people who are affected by this disease become empowered by taking charge of this piece of their lives, which they know more about than anyone else, and sharing it. I think that's a huge statement when you can say, I know what MS does to me. I know what living in this body does. The researchers can think of the best questions in the world, but if they're not relevant to me, it does us no good. And being able to take people who actually have MS and get them excited and engaged in the research process, I think that's the other big success. It's at that individual level, and nothing gets me more excited than just to be able to talk about this one-on-one with people. Sit down over a cup of coffee and say, okay, ask me your questions. What do you want to know about MS? What do you want to know about iConquerMS? So, and then if you look at the biggest picture there of this national network of PCORnet, I really wish that I could have a live audience that I could look out to and ask them to raise their hands and say, did you know you were part of a clinical data research network if you're seen at one of these places? Are you familiar with PCORI and PCORnet? Do you know what a gem we have in this resource of being able to look at records and accelerate the research process by that? And there's tremendous value because when research is being done, researchers have to first come up with their proposal. Then they have to go to their IRB, and then they have to recruit people to participate in it. And that's all time and labor and resource intensive and takes so much to be able to accomplish. And with PCORnet, we've done a lot of that hard work already. The data is there. The people are there. I have a community of people with multiple sclerosis who've already consented that said, I want to help with MS. What can I do in research to help this? So that's a great resource that we're not, I think the country's just not aware that we have yet. And we're still relatively new. So we're only a couple years into this with PCORnet, so that's with our visibility increasing is really critical.
Well, you're definitely reaching new people. We have a comment from one of our listeners, Gail, who says, I read the MS Focus article last week and then joined iConquerMS. What I found is answering the survey questions was therapeutic.
I love that response. Thank you, Gail, for sharing that. It's really hard to condense it because there's so much information to put it into one article to get someone to go to their computer and sign up, so I'm glad you did that. But I find it really inspiring for you to say that answering the survey questions was therapeutic, and would love to know more if you found it helpful to you on your own personal situation, or was it in putting it in context, knowing that you're not alone and the only person experiencing these things. So if you get a chance, I'd love to have you just drop us a note sometime or maybe join us at Smart Patients and talk about that. I do see your response now. I see that you said it was empowering, that you were not alone. And that warms my heart. And to me, if all that I've done with this initiative is impact one person, I know now that you've been impacted, then you will go and you will carry that forward to someone else. And I think that's some of the most powerful things we can do in advocacy work. So thank you for sharing that experience with me.
All right. I'd like to give our callers who are not able to be online an opportunity to answer questions. So what I'm going to do is
the conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Is to take everyone off listen-only mode. That will bring everyone's line on the line. They're not muted at this moment. If you would like to mute yourself, you can press *6 on your phone to go back to mute. But this way, if any of you have any questions who weren't able to be online, please go right ahead. Or any comments to share, you're on the line. Okay.
I'm going to say, I know everyone's there because I can hear them breathing, and I can see that they're still online, and they've not hung up on us, and they followed the presentation to the very end, which I'm really thankful for. You know, when I was putting this together, there's so much information to share, and it's difficult to do with just my talking, and it's impossible to do with just showing slides. So hopefully this was a good mix for everyone who was on the call, and they take away information and enough that makes them want to learn more.
All right.
Thank you for your presentation.
On that note, I'd like to remind everyone, if you missed any part of this program, it will be rebroadcast on MS Focus Radio, and it will be available on demand and on the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation's YouTube channel at some time next week. You can follow the Foundation on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram for the times and access information for those, or subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to be able to see the presentation when it goes live. I'd like to extend our sincere thanks to our sponsors for their support of this program, and to all of our callers for your support, and especially to Laura Kolaczkowski. Thank you so much for the hard work that you put into this presentation and the hard work that you put into furthering research for people with MS.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, and thank you everyone for taking time out tonight to join us to learn more. And good night.
Good night, everyone.